goes that St Brigid was called to the sickbed of a chieftain, and he was a non-believer. And while she was there, she talked to him about the story of Christ, and she was explaining about Christ's death and resurrection. And as she sat there, there were rushes on the floor to keep the dust off, and she started twiddling with them, and as she did so, she wove a cross from the rushes, and she used it to show the chieftain how Jesus had died, and before he died, he was converted by the words that Bridget had used, and was baptized before he died by Bridget's witness. So that is the story of how the St Brigid's cross came to be. Across Ireland there are lots of different types of St Brigid's crosses, and they're formed in different ways. Here I have 3 different ones that I have made using paper straws, just as samples for you. This one here is probably the one that's most recognisable. It's used in a lot of corporate logos. A lot of the St Brigid's cross jewellery would have this form as well. So it's characterised by the square centre on it. This one here is constructed in much the same way as this one, but this time there are only 3 legs on it, so to speak. Some say that this is the form of the Trinity, and that that's where the story behind this one comes from. When you're forming it, the only difference is that instead of creating a 4th spoke, you bend one of the spokes to become angled, so that you have just the 3 spokes, and it creates this pattern then with the triangle in the centre instead of the square. This one here is used in a lot of places across Ireland as well, and it can be used with lots of different, many different parts weaving over the top of each other. Some would have 4 strands going across, and some will have the 3, others have more. This one I've done 3 in each direction, with 2 straws on each of them. It was tricky to do with paper straws, so it's kind of hard to describe it. I'm going to try it with some plastic straws for you to demonstrate how this one here is made as well. This one here is just a little bit simpler, especially for children. It's not quite as complicated in terms of the weaving process. It's a little bit fiddly to get the bits woven through, but in general it's easier to make. But there are other forms as well, similar to some forms that you get in folk art in other countries in the world. So those are some examples of how a St Brigid's cross can be made. So this is how we make the cross. First of all, you will need some rushes, or I've got some brown paper straws here as well, that I made the ones that you saw earlier from. This is all I could manage to source from North Belfast during a pandemic, but it should be just enough to make one cross. So the first thing you need to do if you're using rushes, or any strong grass really does, is to take the leaves off it first and dispose of them somewhere. This is a very messy job. So start with a straight one single rush, then get another one. So I hold the straight one in my left hand and the other one in my right hand because I'm right-handed. The trick is to always hold in your non-dominant hand and do the weaving with your dominant hand. So the first thing you need to do is kind of squash the rush that you have in your dominant hand to kind of soften it enough that you can bend it approximately in half without breaking it. And then you fold it over the middle. Fold it over the middle of the other rush. Okay, as you've done, after you do that, you're holding it just with your dominant hand where you folded it, and then you grab what you've just folded with your non-dominant hand. Then you turn that to point to the bottom. So always hold with your non-dominant hand and hold that pointing to the bottom. Then you get your next rush, again using your dominant hand, pinch it to soften the center of the stem and bend it in half approximately. Then you fold it across the one that you have just bent, underneath the one you started with. Pinch it in the center as you let go with your non-dominant hand, then grab what you've just folded with your non-dominant hand and turn it to the bottom. So you can start to see the folds taking shape here. So we've got 3 prongs now. The next rush, again, pinching with your dominant hand, fold it in half and fold it over the one you've just done to make your 4th spoke on the cross. So you're always pointing to the left if you're right-handed. Then pinching that until you let go, grab it with your non-dominant hand and turn it to the bottom. You usually have to hold it quite close to the top just to make sure that it doesn't wobble as you're going along. It becomes more stable the more rushes you put on it, and since I don't have a huge number here, it's kind of hard, but so I'll try to do the next one. So pinch with your dominant hand, fold in half and fold it around the one you have just folded, pointing to the left. Grab a hold of all the spokes and then let go to turn it to the bottom. And again, pinch to fold, point to the left and turn it down to the bottom. So you always put it underneath the one that you've just, the one above it, so that you're creating the same pattern each time. So that's pointing to the bottom. So pinch the next one, fold it in half, turn it to the bottom, pinch the next one, fold it in half underneath and turn it to the bottom. So you should be able to see the square shape that has formed in the center of it. Now I at this point have run out of rushes, so the next thing to do is to tie it. The other thing that you need, I forgot to say at the beginning, was elastic bands or something else to tie with. These are little hair ties. So I snip off the end because it's easier to get the elastic band on, still holding the one that I've just finished folding. Get the elastic band and put it on the bottom to hold it in place. Just wrap it around a few times to hold it tight. Now the rest of the cross will hold in shape. You don't have to hold quite so tight anymore, but trim all the other ends so that they're approximately the same length as each other. An elastic band on each of them to hold them in place. This is where it gets messy. Little bits of rushes go flying across the room. Turn again, chop it off, and the elastic on the last one. So that's how you make a very short St Brigid's cross out of real grass, but as I said, it was hard to source at this time of the pandemic and not being able to travel very far to get them, but I'll also do one with the paper crosses, paper straws, so that you can see how to make it with that as well. This is how we make this form of the St Brigid's cross. I've made this one with paper straws. They were quite hard to work with. I only used 2 across each time, and I'm going to do the same with the plastic straws. but normally there would be 3, 3 and 3 here. So if you're making it with rushes, normally you would use 18 straws altogether, 9 in each direction. But I'm going to do it with 6 in each direction tonight. So we have got 6 of them are elastic band together to make one big stalk, and then the rest of them have been put together in pairs. These are the ones that are going to weave through the main one. So the first one, we need to pull it apart in 2, and we weave one end in through it. Then pull apart another 2 and weave it over those. So we should have an over, under, over pattern. You need to keep hold of that with your non-dominant hand, and then get your next pair that have been clipped together somehow. I've just used little hair tags and little hair elastics on these. So this time we are going, this one has gone over first, so I'm going to go under first, then over, and then under. This is where the paper straws were too firm and I couldn't really weave it quite as neatly as rushes, or the plastic straws are more bendable. Okay, and then your next one is done the same way as the first one. So we had over, under, over, then we had under, over, under, and then we go back to over to start with. So over the first pair, under the next one, and over the final one. So you have your 3 across 3. Then all you need to do is attach these together. So I just take off one of the elastics off the outside one and reuse it around all 3. So that's one end tied, and then again close up the other end. I'll pull off one of the elastics to reuse. And use it around all 3. Okay, once you've done that, you just need to tidy up the center a little bit. So push them together, apart, whatever way you need to do, just to tidy it off. Make sure it's all centered and pull them apart a little just so you can see the weaving effect. This obviously looks much nicer with real rushes. Even though the paper one looks nicer than this, but the plastic straws do bend easier. Pipe cleaners work as well if you don't have anything else, or you can even just do it with strips of paper, and it works fine like that too.